So everybody, welcome to this final installment in the Gaelic4Mothers&Others sponsored by SportsDirect webinar series. This is the final installment of a 6-webinar series, and we are delighted to be bringing you this webinar both live and on our social media platforms. So the title of this webinar is Peer-to-Peer Support Within a Group, Tips on Supporting Each Other Within a Group. And we are delighted to be joined by Bernie Durkan, who is Sport Ireland accredited sports psychologist. So I'm going to let Bernie take over, and I hope everybody enjoys this webinar, and be sure to share the link to it from our social media pages also. So Bernie, I'm going to hand it over to yourself. I'm going to duck out, and again, I'll be monitoring the chat. So if anybody does have any interactions, make sure to type them into the chat.
Perfect. Thanks a million, Vinny. So just, I suppose, to say good evening to everybody that's come on. I'm Bernie. I'm an accredited sports psychologist with Sport Ireland, and I suppose, you know, it's important to introduce yourself and give a bit of background info. So as well as being a sports psychologist, I'm a primary school teacher. So the two roles massively, you know, interlink and overlap, and there's a lot of shared skills between both. And in terms of my involvement with the LGFA, so I'm a player, I'm a coach, and still play with my club, Kilcock, and very thankful to the LGFA for asking me on this evening. So when I was speaking with Vinny, he wanted me, this is the title we come up with, so peer-to-peer support within a group. And I suppose when we talk about Gaelic4Mothers&Others, one of the key things that we're thinking about is building connections. So, you know, building connections in the community, and building connections with other people with similar interests. So I might get you to move it on there, Vinny, if that's all right, onto the next slide there. So I just think, you know, what is connection? I suppose connection is our reason why. So as humans, we're always searching for connections, whether it be with our family, whether it be with people in our community, whether it be with people in our school life, home life. And as, you know, participants in the Gaelic4Mothers&Others program, there's a reason why you joined. You're seeking a connection, you know, to develop friendships, to play a sport you love, or to take up a sport that you love. So I think that's the key thing. You know, and everyone in your community is part of, you know, you'll all find some connection. It might be a love of coffee, it might be that you have children, it might be that you love traveling, it might be, you know, just sharing similar interests. So somebody that's a great role model in terms of connection is Dr. Brene Brown, and some of you might have heard of her. She has a great TED Talk and a great book out there that I definitely recommend reading. It's called Daring Greatly, and if you look up her TED Talk on vulnerability, but when she talks about connection, she talks about the energy that exists between people where they feel seen, heard, and valued. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this with you this evening, because I think everything comes back to connection at the end of the day. And maybe just to talk a little bit about Dr. Brene Brown. So she's a research professor. She's based in Texas, in America, and she's done a lot of research on empathy, shame, and vulnerability. And it's really interesting when you listen to her work, and definitely recommend her TED Talk. But what she talks about is encouraging people to be authentic and real, and being vulnerable. So what that means is, you know, she talks about vulnerability being a strength, and when we shut off from revealing our true selves, we grow distant from things that give meaning and purpose to our lives. So it's important when you go and, you know, are brave enough to take the step to maybe join your local Gaelic4Mothers&Others group, that you have to go outside your comfort zone, and you have to make an effort to, you know, meet people, introduce yourself, include other people, and you know, create those connections that are so important for long-lasting friendships and relationships. And throughout this evening, I'm going to go back a lot to my own personal experiences, because I feel, for me, I learn a lot through story and through making connections with other people. So I currently still play with my club in Kilcock, and when I go down to the club, and I'm sure our coaches give out about us all the time, but the first 5 or 10 minutes that we get there is spent talking to each other, chatting, catching up, venting, giving out, but that's our place, and a safe place to do it. And we've made those connections because we've grown up playing football together. But where my club is, it's on the outskirts of, we're a commuter town to Dublin. There's lots of new people moving in all of the time. So there's always new people meeting or joining our club. And it's so important that you make the effort to make those connections. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, I suppose, is how do we build meaningful connections with others? So I think it's important to look at the research, and everything I talk about today is evidence-based. It's not my opinion. It's not what I think you should do. This is all based on research, that lots of researchers have done over the last couple of years. So in terms of women participating in physical activity, this is taken from the Women's Health Task Force. So this is the latest research. So there's numerous health benefits. So that's, related to your heart, lungs, all that kind of thing, improvement in psychological health, personal development and self-esteem. And what I'm going to focus on this evening is social engagement. And I think social engagement is a massive part of the Gaelic4Mothers&Others initiative. And it's one of the huge benefits you can get from participating in the programme. And what this study discovered was that, there's two barriers to women participating in exercise. And the first one is kind of from a practical and lifestyle point of view. So, if you have children or you're running a household or you're trying to multitask going from work to home, to doing homework, or just literally living a commuter's life where you're on the road, going to work, coming back, trying to get back out for a session on the pitch. They're massive barriers to participating in exercise. And the second thing is personal and emotional barriers. So, maybe you've labeled yourself as somebody who's, not a sports person, or I'm not sporty, not knowing anyone. So, with society today, lots of people are having to move away from, the community they grew up in, just, due to the economy or whatever. So, if you're not local to the area, that's a barrier. You mightn't want to look silly if you're taking up a sport that you've never played before. And these are things we need to think about, and things we need to be mindful of when we're participating in Gaelic4Mother&Other initiative. So the next thing I'm going to move on and talk about is just developing your communication skills. And communication skills are so important. And, as humans, we need to communicate with lots of people in lots of different environments. So in terms of your Gaelic4Mothers&Others environment, it's really important that you use welcome and body language. So even if that's just, saying hello, saying welcome, come on in, a smile. Very often people stand around and you'll see them with their arms crossed. So that's just doesn't give off welcoming vibes as such. So just making that effort to, make eye contact and say, hi, how are you? Come over. And I've said it there, conversation starters. So, as Irish people, I think we're well accustomed to talking about the weather and things like that. So just, starting off the conversation, stepping outside of your comfort zone. How long have you been playing, ladies Gaelic? What's your role in the club? Have you played before? And one of the things I've written there is active listening. And I think, this is something, and I find this as a teacher and as a player, and I suppose as a coach, and my work as a sports psychologist, people find it very hard to listen. And, people just want to be heard. So when you're speaking to people, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on again, listening is such an important skill, and I'm going to talk about it later on in the session. But just initially, when people are coming up and joining in your club or whatever, just, be conscious of your body language. Make sure you make that eye contact. The power of a smile. It's so important. Like I said before, going on outside of your comfort zone to start a conversation with somebody new, or somebody that is not inside your group. So then building meaningful connections between players. And I think, it doesn't matter what team you're part of. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight is transferable to the workplace. It's transferable to, any sport. It doesn't necessarily just have to be a Gaelic4Mothers&Others group. But here's just some tips, to find out something about, somebody who's new to your group, or if you're new to a group, going outside your comfort zone. So, introduce yourself. My name is, and I think a lot of people are straight away thinking to themselves, oh my God, 10 people have told me their names. How am I going to remember them all? a line you could say is, thank you for telling me your name. I'm definitely going to forget. So please, forgive me if I'm going to ask you a couple of times what your name is. I'll get it eventually. Always make the effort to say hello. So I think as women as well, sometimes, we can interpret body language in a way that mightn't be the message that's being communicated. So always make an effort, to say hello to somebody, even if you're not necessarily going to get a response back. Ask somebody what are their interests outside of sport. That's how you can find out about, what you have in common. And, it might be, that your children go to the same school. It might be that you have no children, but you're of a great interest in hiking or, coffee or eating out. Are they new to the area? And if they are, straight away, there's a conversation starter. Well, this place is great for lunch, or here's a place that you could go for a walk around the area. How are they feeling? So, like, how's your energy? How are you doing this evening? Are you excited about this? Don't be nervous. And the last thing that I've said there is share your experiences of being part of the group. So, yeah, do you know what? I was really nervous the first night I came up, but, everyone has made me feel welcome and at home. And I'm, I've been here for a couple of sessions now, and it's great. So, just embrace it and enjoy yourself. And I think, that's a big thing you need to emphasize is enjoy it and have fun. This is your time for you, because what you'll find very often is with participants in the Gaelic4Mothers&Others program. And I know if I think about my own mum, she was somebody that moved from a rural part of Ireland up to Kildare, and she'd 5 children. So her focus was her kids. So, she moved somewhere, didn't really know people, and her focus was her kids. So she actually never got the opportunity to go and make her own friends until, we were in school, and she met people at the gate or whatever. And it wasn't until we'd finished school and she got her own job that, she felt that she was part and made connections with other people outside of people related to her children. So, just sharing your experiences and just being conscious and mindful of everybody else. And I suppose what I'm going to talk about next is listening skills. So this is something, like I said previously, that is so important. And I think very often when people start talking to us, our go-to thought is, what am I going to say back to this person? I'm just going to give them advice. So just some kind of key pointers in terms of listening to people. So, really focus on what the person is saying. So, and I say this to the kids in school all of the time is, make eye contact, like nod and acknowledge, that you're listening to what the person is saying, and try and stop yourself from, coming up with a response. And, a key thing to do to help you along, your listening journey essentially is, repeat back to the person what they've said. So I'd be like, so am I right in saying that you moved here, 4 months ago, and you've, 2 children, or am I right in saying that you moved here, 6 or 7, or you've lived here all your life, and this is your first time that you've ever come up to your local club. Wow, how brave is that? And I think as well, I don't know, is it a tendency of, women that are mad to give advice when people aren't necessarily looking for it. I know when I go to my own training session, we're giving out, but we just need a place to vent and know that it's a safe place that we can say what we want to say, and it's not going to be brought somewhere else. So sometimes it's just a place, people just need to talk and get something off their chest, because that might be the only adult conversation they've had that day. So, you don't need to give advice unless it's asked for. And the Me Too syndrome, and you'll find this all the time. And I think even sometimes this being brought to your attention makes you conscious of the way that you talk and communicate with other people. So, if somebody said, oh, I couldn't sleep last night, I haven't slept well for the last couple of nights. You're like, oh, I'm the exact same. And then you start talking about you. Whereas, they've started the conversation and it's something that they want to talk about. But now you've taken away their opportunity to get something off their chest. So it's really important that you let somebody, talk. Let there be silence. It's okay, to have a couple of seconds silence. And if somebody has something else to say, they will keep talking. So, don't interrupt, let people talk. And like I said, the best thing to do is, repeat back to the person what they have said, check, that you've understood what it is that they are saying to you. And then you can talk about your own experiences. I'm not saying don't do that, but it's just important when someone has something to say that you give them their platform, and then, you know, you can bring what your side of the conversation to the table. So the next thing I'm talking about then is building meaningful connections during play. So I suppose what I've spoken a lot about is new people maybe joining a Gaelic4Mothers&Others group, or you know, people starting off. There's lots of you here, I suppose, that have maybe have played for the last couple of years. So you've, you know, gained that experience, you've gained that confidence of, you know, being out on the pitch, taking part in blitzes, and even just a training. And I think sometimes we want to be encouraging and supportive to other people, but it's really important to reflect on yourself and ask yourself the question you know, what am I giving feedback on? So it's so easy to get caught into that trap of, you know, well done, you're brilliant, keep going. And some people will love that, and other people will hate it. But again, it comes back to building connections and finding out about your teammates, and, you know, what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So when you're giving feedback to the people you're playing with, always focus on their effort. So be like, you know, you tried your best there. You really put your foot through the ball there, or I noticed you used your left leg there, rather than on the outcome. So, you know, like hard luck, you know, go again, unlucky with that wide, good score. Always focus on the effort and the process. So when you say something to another player, it doesn't matter what it means to you, it matters what it means to that player. And again, that what I'm saying there just doesn't go for, you know, when you're on the pitch with your Gaelic4Mothers&Others teammates. That goes for if you have kids and you're supporting them. It goes for if you're coaching people. So just some things to think about. You have control over your voice. So you are the only person that has control over what you say to yourself. So there's, you know, an inner voice there, and the way you talk to yourself has a massive impact on your performance as a player. Your control over your voice controls what you say to other people. So again, it would be great if you could bring the focus to their effort and their use of skill, rather than the outcome of their effort. Be encouraging. So, you know, that's it, keep going, well done. And the power of some words. So, you know, I've written here and instead of but. So it might be good shot. If I said to you, good shot, but next time, you know, pass it off. Or whereas I said, good shot, and next time, you know, think about hand passing to, you know, one more time before you pass it over the ball, something like that. You're given the same message, but the language that you use doesn't have as negative a connotation. Also think about your tone of voice. You know, if there's somebody constantly shouting at you, that's where your control can go, and you're like, they're constantly shouting at me, they're putting me off my game. And this is what happens, you know, if as humans, the way we think, we can only focus on one thing at a time. It's like if somebody tells you not to think about a pink elephant, the one thing you're going to think about is a pink elephant. So I would always say, always tell people what you want them to do, not what you don't want them to do. And, you know, your tone of voice is really important in terms of delivering your message, and same with your body language. So, you know, if you're playing a blitz or whatever, and, you know, somebody puts the ball wide, or somebody, you know, gives a hand pass and it's intercepted, you don't want to see people saying, you know, oh, for God's sake, or throwing their eyes up to heaven. You want to see, you know, a clap on the back, and, you know, start focusing, good effort, you know, keep going. So all of those things, you know, in one-off situations don't seem very much, but if you think about all of the times in a situation, like there's two inevitables in every time you play a game. One is you will definitely make a mistake, and number two is, you know, your concentration is going to drift. So it's really important as a teammate that you're constantly encouraging, and like I said at the start, always focusing on the process instead of the outcome. So the next thing I'm going to talk about then is building meaningful connections with injured players. And, you know, very often it doesn't matter if you're under 7, right up to playing senior, right up to playing Gaelic4Mothers&Others. Injury is a likelihood for a lot of people, and sometimes when people get injured, it's very hard to still feel like a part of the team. And what the research says is, you know, social support from your teammates is a massive part of the recovery process. So, you know, if somebody on your team is injured, encourage them to come down training, give them a role within the group. So, you know, if you're going playing a blitz or something like that, give them some sort of role. It might be that they are in charge of the dressing rooms and putting up the jerseys. It might be that, you know, they take the warm up. And it's really important that you check in with players, especially if they've been injured throughout the course of a Gaelic4Mothers&Others session. So if you're the coach or if you're a fellow player, you know, give them a shout, give them a text, just see how they're keeping, just so they know that, you know, despite the fact they're injured and they can't train and they can't play, that they're very much still a part of the team, because, you know, that's the ethos of Gaelic4Mothers&Others, is that you're trying to create a social and a community spirit. So in terms of players being injured, it's really, really important that they feel supported by their teammates. And I suppose one thing that's really important in terms of developing connections is the importance of the role of the coach in developing those connections. So as a coach, like I said, if somebody is injured, it's really important that you make contact with them. So, you know, you're the link. As a coach, you're the first point of contact when new players come, or if and you're very often the person that you know, makes the connections between people. Oh, you know, this person is from such and such a place, this other person is from the same place, I'll introduce them. And, you know, just developing that rapport. So again, going back to those simple communication skills that I spoke about earlier, you know, always, you know, giving people a smile, saying hello, being encouraging, so focusing on the process rather than the outcome. And, you know, just making training fun, because at the end of the day, that's the reason why you've decided to join your local club. So, you know, fun things like icebreakers, just going back to those playground games. You know, sometimes when I go up training, we might play a game of like stuck in the mud, or, you know, flush the toilet, and the crack and the fun that brings about. And, you know, and that's what helps develop those, you know, those connections with others. Same thing again, I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but again, you know, when you're giving feedback to players, it doesn't always have to be, you know, well done, well done. You know, it's up to you to get to know your players and know which players, you know, will want feedback on what they can do to be better. And then you'll have other players that are there for the fun, and they're just delighted to be out of the house for an hour in the evening. That's their time for them. So I think, you know, as a Gaelic4Mothers&Others coach, you have to be mindful of the reasons why people are there and why they're playing. And, you know, make sure that it's not all serious, and that there is a lot of fun, and you're creating an environment where people feel safe and they'll want to come back to. And I suppose the next thing that I'm going to talk about is psychological safety. And this is kind of one of the buzz things in the world of sports psychology at the moment, but it's not just relevant to sport, it's relevant to the workplace. And lots of the research with psychological safety actually comes from the workplace. So I think that's important to talk about, because very often when I talk about this, it's in terms of, you know, high performance sport, but it applies to sport right across the board. So what does it mean? So psychological safety means that team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. So when you think about the ethos of Gaelic4Mothers&Others, you know, everybody that's decided to go outside the comfort zone and to be part of the team has already taken a risk. And, you know, very often people who decide to join Gaelic4Mothers&Others have, you know, played at a high level, but want to continue their involvement in a sport that they love, or they might never have played before. So they're coming up to learn a new skill. And I think, you know, there's so many different skills and qualities and characteristics that people bring to a team. And in terms of that team, you're all, like I said, finding your connections and building your team around that. But it all goes back to what I said at the very start of this session, and that it's important to be vulnerable and be open and be honest, and just say, do you know what, you know, I've never played before, I'm feeling a bit nervous about this, but then receiving the encouragement from other people. That's really, really important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a study that Google did. So it's called the Theristotle Project, and what they wanted to do, I suppose Google is a massive multi-corporation company, I suppose, and they, you know, invested a lot of money in this research because they wanted to find out what are the characteristics of a successful team. And effectively what the research found out was that, you know, there is no set characteristics of a successful team, but there are two things that stood out for them. And the first thing was communication. So each member of the team needs to feel that they have an equal opportunity to speak. So I think it's important in a Gaelic4Mothers&Others session that, and very often it might be, you know, people who are on the committee are the people that are always talking, and sometimes they're always talking because nobody else is willing to go outside of the comfort zone and bring something else to the conversation. But it's really important in terms of your group and your team that, you know, if somebody wants to speak and say something, that they have an opportunity to do that. And the second thing was empathy. So being able to recognize and understand and relate to the feelings of others on your team. So, you know, that might just be, you know, having the kind of life experience to know that, you know, somebody, you know, might look upset over there. So I'll just go over and say, hello, how are you? Are you doing okay? And maybe no one to leave the conversation there, but acknowledge, you know, that they're there and that they've made the effort to come. The other thing is, you know, to make sure that everybody feels that they are part of that team. So including everybody, going outside of your comfort zone to make people feel like they're involved. And, you know, just little things like, you know, the initiative is called Gaelic4Mothers&Others. So, you know, don't fall down, you know, that hole of being like, okay, like, well, the mothers come over here and the others come over here and we play against each other. You know, it's one team, and it's really, really important that everybody integrates and is made feel like they're part of something. And, you know, very often if somebody is on the other's team, they might want to be a mother, and that could bring up, you know, things for them. So it's just really important that you're mindful of the way you talk to people, the language that you use, and the effect and the power of both spoken word and your body language. And like I always say to people that I work with, if you're not sure about something, go and have the conversation, just to make sure that you've understood what's been said to you, or you've understood the message that you've got. And again, it comes back again to active listening. So, you know, saying something to somebody, actively listening to them, and then just repeating back. So this is, you know, this is what you've said. Is that, you know, the message that you were trying to get across? And then finally, I think something that's probably a massive part in terms of building connections with your Gaelic4Mothers&Others group, and something that is so important and so fun, is building those meaningful connections off the pitch. So, you know, you're not just footballers, you're people before you're footballers, and through building your connections on the pitch, you'll find out your common interests and you can make plans, you know, around that. So it might come back to, you know, your kids go to the same play group, so maybe you'll go for a walk when you drop them off there. It might be that you love a little glass of wine in the evening, so it might be that you make, you know, plans to go and have a glass of wine and a cheese board, something like that. And I think it's important as well. It's brilliant that there's the initiatives like the blitzes for the Gaelic4Mothers&Others, but it's important that you plan social activities. So it might even just be, you know, go bowling for a night, arrange a night at a table quiz in a local pub, or like just go for a walk or go for a hike or go away for a weekend. It's really important, I think, as well. Sometimes we get a bit overwhelmed if we meet people from our team in a setting that's not at the local pitch. And you're thinking to yourself, God, will they recognize me? They mightn't recognize me. Will I say hello? Won't I say hello? Always make the effort, you know, to go and say hello if you can. And that will be, you know, really meaningful to some people, because they'll recognize, you know, that you've made that connection. You know, you've introduced each other to one another at Gaelic4Mothers&Others, and now, you know, you've made that connection again away from the pitch. And even, you know, just little things like creating links with your club. And I think that's so important, you know, making sure you have a representative on your committee, doing a Gaelic4Mothers&Others fundraiser, promoting your training and your blitzes, and even doing little things like, you know, maybe getting involved in coaching if you have children involved in the club, or even if you don't have children, you know, you might decide to take up refereeing, you might decide to take on a committee officer role, or you might just decide, you know what, I'm going to go and support, you know, the ladies team and they're playing, or I'll go and support the minor team and they're playing. And, you know, people will start recognizing your face and start associating you with your Gaelic4Mothers&Others around the club. So I think that's really, really important. And I know I've spent a lot of time this evening, and I suppose talking about building meaningful connections on and off the pitch. And I think something that is important to talk about when you're talking about building those connections is also talking about establishing boundaries. And, you know, what is a boundary? So it's what's okay and what's not okay, and why. And very often when you have put yourself outside your comfort zone and joined a group like this, or you mightn't necessarily know a lot of people, or you might know 2 or 3 people and they're your go-tos, and you don't really feel the need to mix with other people. But it's really important to put yourself first as a person. So it's really important you prioritize your own needs and your own self-care. And, when I'm talking about establishing boundaries, the first thing that comes to my mind is, there might be a WhatsApp group, and there's messages going into the WhatsApp group at from 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight. And that can be overwhelming. So it might just be saying to, a group of people that you're with, do you think it would be useful if we said, let's only put messages in our Gaelic4Mothers&Others WhatsApp group between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And that's just one suggestion off the top of my head. Another thing might be, let's train 3 times a week, and you mightn't be able to commit to that. So it might be, I can commit to 1 night a week, and I'm not able to make the rest. And I think very often we feel the need, to offer an explanation as to why you can't go to something or you can't make a blitz, whereas you don't. No is a full sentence, and that's fine. You don't need to explain yourself. And I suppose the next thing to talk about is, how to establish those boundaries, which can be difficult but necessary. So little things like just be clear and respectful. So it might be, do you mind if I have a word with you? I can't go to the next 2 blitzes. You don't need to give a reason. You can just say it's just not possible for me to go. Or it might be, if somebody might want you to take on a role on a fundraising committee or something like that, and you can just say, no, I can't do it. That's fine. That's acceptable. Or it might just be, I can't take that on right now, but it is something I could maybe help with in the future. And it's just really important that you know your boundaries. You're the only person who can control what you can do. And it's very important that you put yourself first and know your limits. Because I think right now, especially, we've been through a pandemic for the last 2 years. Everybody's, getting back to the reality of work and inflation. So it's really important, that you've lots of other responsibilities. So, know your boundaries. It's okay to say that you can't do something. If somebody is putting pressure on you to, maybe go somewhere that you don't want to go, it's okay to say, no, I don't want to go. And that's fine. I always say to one of my workmates, we laugh about it all the time, because if I could take my own advice on board, it'd be great, but no is a full sentence. So I'm going to finish it up there, I suppose. If anyone has any questions that you'd like to ask in terms of anything I was talking about this evening, feel free to work away there. But I suppose a lot of what I spoke about this evening probably has been talked about a lot in the previous webinars that you've done, and it's kind of just reflects a lot on what they've said in terms of what you have control over, and just building those connections but establishing those boundaries too. So Vinny, I don't know if to come in there.
Yeah, geez, thanks so much, Bernie. Just incredible content and incredible understanding and knowledge of our participants. So thanks so much. Some of the stuff that struck me there, the active listening and the communication, I'm one of those Me Too people. And it was when you said it, I was just well, it wasn't just me realizing about myself. I was I literally know everybody who does that to me. So I was relating to that so much there. And even when you were referring there to the role of the coach, obviously I do some coaching of an adult ladies team myself, and it's not Gaelic4Mothers, but correlates along the same lines. But it is you as a coach, and it's the coach's role to have so many different aspects that need to be covered as a coach to really create those connections between players, make them feel welcome, make them feel that it's a place they can be themselves, make them feel it's a place they can fall down, and that there's no judgment there, that they're going to get picked back up by their teammates in terms of those connections created. So yeah, I like so much that I could relate, in terms of my own role as well. So in terms of Gaelic4Mothers&Others, absolutely, I'm sure everybody who's tuned in is kind of going, yeah, that's our group, or that's our coach, or I've come across that. And also as well about establishing those boundaries, and for people's ability to say, do you know what, no, I can't make that. And I hear that all the time from Gaelic4Mothers&Others participants who contact me, and they say, do you know what, I don't want to play 2 games a month. I know we are permitted to play 2 games a month, but I don't want to. And I say, look, that's fine. You need to go to your coordinator and you need to establish that boundary with them. You need to make them aware that that's not for you. So if you do only want to play that 1 game or that 1 blitz, and the strength of the program is what happens once a week with your weekly meetup and your crack and all the rest. But there are those boundaries there. And I suppose one thing that definitely jumped out at me was, and I suppose a new phenomenon to us as humans, is the WhatsApp group. And I have been in a few WhatsApp groups in terms of being with teams and actual Gaelic4Mothers&Others groups, just when you're giving them a hand starting off, and and you're there just to impart information, but your phone is pinging at 2 a.m. and you're kind of, you do need to contact those people and say, look, that's not okay. I have to be up for work in the morning. So, and as you said, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. What a window, it's 12 hours there, that's your window of information. And if you want to chat, we're happy enough with that. But everything that you've covered there, absolutely relatable to the whole program. So listen, thank you so much for that. And thank you everybody who has tuned in for this particular webinar. So this is finishing off our Gaelic4Mothers&Others sponsored by SportsDirect webinar series for this year. Thanks so much to Bernie for coming on this evening. I think we're all indebted to you for your delivery of the webinar. Absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure everybody who has tuned in will appreciate your webinar delivery for us. So thanks so much for that. So with that, folks, we're going to tune out. Thank you so much for your engagement. If anybody has any queries or questions, you can get in contact with me directly at vincent.whelan@lgfa.ie. And I will, if needs be, I can put you in touch with Bernie as well if you wanted any more feedback from that as well. So thank you so much. I'm going to stay online for a couple of minutes, and Bernie, if you want to stay online there as well. And thanks so much to everybody. So slán live.